And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thursday morning's flying weather shows a band of IFR here, Koyukuk Valley down across the Yukon River into the Kuskokwim Valley, and then down along the into northeast Bristol Bay with marginal VFR here over the northern Bering Sea with a good swath of VFR over the central Aleutians there back to Shimianatu, and also some VFR here for the northern Bering Sea down along the southwest coast, Yukon Delta into the Chukchi Sea. Got some mostly marginal VFR for the North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as the eastern interior, but becoming VFR here, south central Alaska. Marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast, and IFR there around the Yakutat area, in across Elfin Cove, Lynn Canal, and then down along the eastern border there. And then for the afternoon, that kind of persists but begins to break up the IFR zone there over the Panhandle, with marginal VFR up to Yakutat into the Copper River Basin, and along and west of the Alaska Range, or into the Kuskokwim Valley there to the Kuskokwim Mountains, and across Iliamna Lake and the Aleutian Range with VFR pretty well entrenched here from the Chukchi Sea, right down across St. Lawrence and Nunivak Islands there. And marginal VFR, the rule here over the interior up to the North Slope, and not much IFR on this chart, just a narrow band here, the system there from Atka Island to about Nikolsky. And for the Friday morning map here, that area slides east-northeastward here from about Unalaska Island into the western Alaska Peninsula with marginal VFR and VFR here over the Bering Sea. Still pretty good there from the Seward Peninsula down along the southwest coast, in fact into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta and on up along the western Alaska Range. Possible marginal VFR, Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, and a good portion of the interior with some IFR up there around the northern Koyukuk Valley. Southeast coast, about the same, so going to the afternoon, start seeing some VFR showing up here along the coastal areas, central and south coast, Prince of Wales Island, and IFR, a couple of zones there, Kodiak Island back to the Aleutian Range and right along the north shore of the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty good over the interior, just some areas of marginal VFR, especially up over the north central part of the state in the Yukon Flats. North Arctic coast, mostly VFR, and the Bering Sea here, VFR, a zone right over the south central Bering down to Adak and Atka, maybe up to the Pribilofs, otherwise marginal VFR. And for the passes, Anatuvik looks marginal again tomorrow, as does Adigan Pass. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, both passes there, marginal VFR. Marginal for rainy and windy as well, with Isabel, marginal VFR. Mentasta looks marginal, and Tanita, VFR. VFR also for Portage, and Chilkoot and White holding IFR through the day. And the freezing levels here at the surface across the southern Bering Sea, now south of the Pribilofs, north of the eastern Aleutians, cutting across the Alaska Peninsula, up just off the North Gulf Coast tomorrow morning. Central and southern Panhandle here, 2,000 to 4,000 feet. Otherwise, out to the west, 2,000 feet, still well south of the Aleutian chain. And for icing, look for some moderate rime icing with the system pushing northward toward the central Aleutians there with the main band here from about Atka Island in toward Nikolsky. Otherwise, nothing of any significance icing-wise over the Bering Sea, and much of interior Alaska could be some isolated moderate rime icing here, just a threat over the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country down into the eastern North Gulf Coast. And then maybe a little more moisture for some considerable moderate icing there over the southern southeast coast. Jet stream here showing south to north flow here at 120 knots. That'll be pulling that moisture up into the southern Panhandle. Light over the interior here, and 65 to 75 knot west-northwesterlies across the southeastern Bering Sea, right across the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, this upper low here holding the jet south of the Aleutian chain. And at 9,000 feet, that low right over the central Aleutians, strongest winds again south of the area there, northwest 40 knots. For the northern Bering Sea, light over the interior to the Arctic coast, down into the Gulf of Alaska. Some 45 knots southwest winds there just north of Yakutat, and then the strongest winds at 9,000 feet here down over the Queen Charlottes, are mostly to the south of Dixon Entrance. And that same thing true for 3,000 feet. Strongest winds here south of the Panhandle, leaving the southeast coast in a pretty light wind pattern. Got some 25 knotters there into Yakutat, northwest up to 35 knots coming out of Kamishak Bay across the Barren Islands. And the strongest winds here, though, out to the west over the Aleutian southern Bering Sea, 45 to 65 knots circulating around that low center just south of the chain. And with that will be considerable moderate turbulence from Nikolsky Island westward out there to about Kiska. And light to isolated moderate turbulence, not quite making it up to Unamak Island there, staying to the west, it looks like at this point in time. Also some light to isolated moderate turbulence there, Fognak Island into the Barrens, Kamishak Bay, and right around Yakutat.